My video settings are all off today because I guess the light coming from the window is a bit harsh. So if you notice, the wall behind me is sort of, non-existent. It's almost like a void space that has no dimension. I was trying to, I don't like the true color, the true life color thing, basically the automatic settings on my camera, because it messes up the color, and I'm sorry, but my skin isn't that dark. And anyway, point being, it's a little bit funny. My hair is kind of playing with itself today as well. I go through this thing where I get a haircut, and it's gelled up and looking sharp on the first day, and I'm not gonna pay $20 for mousse or for styling putty, or the range of products that or putting 3 different products in your hair at the same time, just to to me that's nonsense. Well, nonsense in the fact that nonsense in the idea that I don't have a lot of money to spend on that stuff. Otherwise I would, but so my hair just goes through this looking good on the first day kind of thing, and it still looks good sometimes, but the behavior is kind of very left to its own devices after the gel and all that stuff wears off on the first day. So that's my little makeup session with myself. I wanted to talk about something that was kind of weighing heavy on my mind in the last couple days, and it's basically the idea of I read, there was an article in The Advocate, which is a queer magazine, that talked about homo-normative behavior, or identity, and and then there's also the flip side, which is heteronormative behavior. So in both cases, I would say that there's some differences based on my experience. Homonormative identities and behavior, in my experience, tends to be a little bit more diffused and a little bit more distributed, whereas heteronormative identities and behavior tends to be a little bit more concrete. In my experience, the definition of homonormative to me, at least the way it was described in The Advocate, seemed a little bit kind of, not that it's a bad thing or a good thing, but it seemed, I don't know, a little bit kind of spread out over almost everybody in the queer community, like kind of, and almost by nature, right? That's the nature of queer identity. It's actually much more diverse than the heteronormative identity. I'm not comparing and contrasting either one for any ends of saying one's better than the other, although there is something to be said about acceptance, etc., etc., and you do make a moral connection with with identity and behavior and attitudes, etc., etc. So I'm not denying that those things do come into play when you discuss identity, whether it be homonormative or heteronormative. But the one thing I'd also like to say is I went through a period where I was kind of dealing with my identity, and I went through trying to break things down into very concrete, separate sections in terms of the way people behave and what people do. There's a lot to be said about attitudes of certain groups of people, whether it be based on anything from race to gender to geographic region to religious background, etc., etc. But there was but there was one person, and ironically, I was arguing an atheist point, and there was one person who happened to be religious, that kind of said something to me that really stuck throughout the years. And I'm talking about maybe about 10 years here, 10 years ago when he said it to me. But he said, and this is something that seems, you would think of it naturally. I don't know why in that moment when he said that, it kind of stuck with me. But he said, nothing happens in a vacuum. And it's true, right? Like nothing does actually happen in a vacuum. Like you know, you could generalize about the attitudes of or the behavior of a certain group of people based on those things, that the parameters I just laid out, but you know, you can't pick one person from that group and say I predict you're gonna act and do and say and do these things and etc. etc. It doesn't work that way. It's always much more complex, right? But I'm not totally denying that there are generalities that you may get away with making. I mean, in today's world, it's kind of, you gotta hush up because sometimes it comes across as kind of like, you know, discriminating. So I mean, you know, there's certain areas you have to be very careful about. But anyway, that's my. I think today was a boring video. I don't know, but I just wanted to get that point across. Yeah, so. You know, nothing exists in a vacuum, so it's never just picking out one person and saying this is how this person will behave and this is what they're going to say. It doesn't work that way. But at the same time, terms like heteronormative and homonormative do exist for a reason. And, you know, just to reiterate, I think homonormative is a bit more diffuse than heteronormative. I think that heteronormative identity is kind of been around for so long and concreted and supported for so long that it's pretty clear sometimes what heteronormative is. You know, if there is any diversity in the term, it comes up from, you know, sort of a reclamation of the seedy underbelly of heteronormative life. But with queer identity, you know, there's not to say that there's a seedy underbelly or anything like that. I mean, things are pretty much exposed because we're going through some sort of revolution right now, but and you know, things. But yeah, that's my thing on that. I don't want to tie anybody down, but I'm saying that these generalities kind of do exist, and that's it. Okay, bye.